Chris Wallace here, advisor to men. For those willing to widen their perspective, bringing you another message of power and love in service of meaning and freedom. Give me a moment of your time. I'd like to share something I think you'll appreciate. It's about sex. It's about natural sex. And at the end of the day, well, men want to get laid. And sex is one of the main ways that a man expresses himself emotionally. Some view sex more from the physical realm, like the need for food, water, sleep, that sort of thing. And that fits Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this helps keep things natural and with less guilt. Others are deeply sensitive to a willing partner whose desire must either match or be somewhat close to their own for sex to occur. So in that whole big spectrum, what could go wrong? Well, that could depend on your sex drive. David Buss is an evolutionary psychology professor at the University of Texas. And in his book, When Men Behave Badly, he writes, men with a short-term mating strategy, in brief, tend to have high sex drives. When these high libido men are low in dark triad personality traits, they implement their strategy through tactics that include honest courtship, charm, and seduction. And here's the way I see it. If pickup is used to overcome anxiety through incremental exposure to something that scares an individual, I'm fine with it. People build confidence by doing, by action, and not so much by thinking. So if your pretty girls intimidate you, go talk to them. But if pickup is used just to notch another number on a guy's belt, well, to each his own. And it won't surprise you if I say that I'm all in on charm and somewhat in on seduction. I've been complimented for my charm for decades, but I have never intentionally seduced somebody, not that I realize. I can't imagine making somebody the target of my talent and nursing her towards undressing. My every move calculated to provoke her trust and excitement. I don't know, man. I don't have time for that. And it means I'm not a fan of deception in general, or of treating women as if they're chattel or as a product to be used for one's gratification. To me, it takes the fun out of mating because I require surrender. Yes, surrender. I also seek to possess my partner during the act of making love. Humans possess each other. My friends, my girlfriend, my wife. There's a lot different from being possessive, which is something else entirely. And that brings up the absurdity of objectifying a woman. Objects can't surrender. Only people can. See the difference? I mean, call me shallow, but if a woman doesn't make good faces of surrender the first time I'm inside her, we'll never fuck again. From introduction to flirtation, I look for signs she's choosing me, and women do the choosing. And I may or may not act to facilitate her desire. Choice, you see, is just the very beginning of surrender. That doesn't make me some kind of moralist above reproach. That's laughable. And I've long known that men and women have banded together since the very beginning to take advantage of each other's strengths and shore up each other's weaknesses. That is an equitable division of talent, each contributing to the whole. Negotiating the pair bond is an important part of what I teach. Insofar as I'm concerned, my philosophical leaning is to help men maintain pair bonding successfully. So I tend to err on the side of togetherness rather than separateness. I think hypergamy is a narrow and exaggerated viewpoint. I don't see it in most women that I know or interact with, or in my reading of the literature on male-female coupling. Most women bet on a guy when he's in his 20s and he doesn't have a pot to piss in. And other top men's coaches that I respect have said the same thing. All I can tell you is that after studying and counseling people professionally for more than 3 decades and having read, pretty much a book a week for most of my life, I further believe that the looks loyalty for men and power generally for women dynamic is the best way to describe attraction and attachment motivations. But there's more. It's these guys. Jungian analysts, Moore and Gillette, wrote a book famous amongst men about male maturation. It's like 3 decades old, and it uses the 4 main archetypes: lover, magician, warrior, and king. And in matters of the heart, we consider the lover in full a man who appreciates beauty, art, music, and sees the good in others. Jung himself said a man needs to find his anima as he ages. Anima is the feminine part of a man's personality, and it comprises his creativity and his chaos, as opposed to the rationality of masculine order. And so the lover is feminine. Thwarted, the lover lives in its shadows, the impotent lover and the addicted lover. Everyone has a shadow in their personality, and these are the parts of ourselves that we keep hidden from others. Now, the impotent lover fails to launch, and he does not penetrate life with his essential will to live, with his life force, while the addicted lover shadow searches wantingly, going from thrill to thrill, ruled by and giving in to desire only to find unfulfillment. He's never satisfied. Then he begins his search anew. It's a never-ending story. And Moore and Gillette say that this is fundamentally a man searching for his mother, longing for the comfort of his mother's womb, safe and dark, something no woman he ever meets can match. The woman laying next to him just won't do because she's not mommy. But there's more. There's more to it than that. You see, many men now say that with the coming of the digital age, things are different, not realizing that these ebbs and flows happen in every generation. I mean, just in the last 100 years, you had the flappers of the early part of last century frequenting speakeasies during the times of prohibition. And then the toughened gals of the mid-century who either fought or helped with the war effort, and then used their wombs to repopulate the West in the greatest baby boom ever. And then you had the mini skirts and the pill-using women of the war-protesting second wave feminist era. And then to the confused grunge and millennial babes, to modern times in the digital era. Women have adapted. Some men might get the impression that the former bonding tenets have all been replaced. The traditional relationship, forgetting the tens of thousands of years of evolutionary history which brought us here. And they might think infidelity and even polyamory are in the future for all of us. I'm not so sure. And it was something that George Leonard said in this book, The End of Sex. Came out in '82, so it's an old book, grant you. He repeated it in Esquire magazine in December of that year. And he said, quote, "If you want endless repetition, see a lot of different people. If you want infinite variety, stay with one." Think about that one for a few seconds. If you want endless repetition, see a lot of people. If you want infinite variety, stay with one. West Coast Canadian singer Joni Mitchell, well, she lived through that 60s free love era. And she says that this quote stopped her in her tracks when she read it in Esquire. And it made her hunker down in the single pair bond. She said it was work, but she made this distinction. She said this, quote, "What happens when you date is you run all your best moves and tell all your best stories. And in a way, that routine is a method for falling in love with yourself over and over again." Listen to that carefully. It's a way to fall in love with yourself over and over again. She went on to say, you can't pull this bullshit with a long-term partner because they know you and they've seen that part of you right from the beginning. And it seems to me then that it behooves each partner to break through the ways in which they avoid intimacy, to rise and love over and over again in our imperfection, in appreciation for each other, to renew their bond by reflirting and redating each other. And this constant death and rebirth are what comprises an awe-inspired relationship. And let me explain that. Awe is that feeling of excitement which borders fear. And it's where we expand our minds and our hearts, and we grow past current paradigms of our existence. Mrs. and I recently had our first date in a year and a half since COVID. First time we were out of the house since the start of the pandemic on our own. So one morning, right after the kids were off to school, I put on clean jeans and a shirt, and I took her to Cora's, our favorite breakfast spot. I don't normally eat breakfast, but I made an exception. I've been with my gal for 15 years, and there's no use denying that we have sex because, well, we have 2 children. It's just that over those 15 years, no 2 times were alike. I'm always finding some new twist to our carnal contrivances, let's say. And I regularly get lost in lustful exploration of her. And in my experience, what Joni Mitchell and George Leonard were saying is right on the money. It's about renewed power and love. Mrs. and I loved our date, and the love and power between us is more than intact. But I'd venture that this is an important gambit that George Leonard put forth: endless repetition versus infinite variety. That's what I want you to remember. The pickup game promises endless variety, but delivers endless repetition. Think of that. While the classic monogamous relationship gives the impression of endless repetition, but actually delivers infinite variety. I, for one, have found this to be true. And no doubt monogamy has also benefited from the Lindy effect, which means that the older something is, the longer it's likely to be around in the future. Well, let me ask you, how long has lust been around? Well, how about love, pair bonding? How long has the pair bond, the monogamous pair bond, been with us? And certainly as far as any of us can remember, and a lot longer than that. And think back not to the agricultural area in the last 10,000 years, but forager and hunter-gatherer, for that's where your instincts were formed. A man and a woman taking advantage of each other's strengths and shoring up each other's weakness in a very low population area. The two, a perfect complementary union, blessed by the nature within they existed. To which my advice to men is always the same. Wherever you go, make yourself powerful. And as long as you're in their vicinity, women will find you. They'll signal you. Then put lust first and let love take care of itself. Lust and love in their infinite varieties. Thanks for listening. Once again, it's Chris Wallace. Please find me at advisortomen.com, where I run the board of directors masterminds to stand with other men in mutual support of each other's quest to live better lives. If you found this interesting, subscribe, leave a comment, look me up. Until next time, stay powerful, true and free. Power and love.